everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Empowering Dietitians Podcast, where each week I dive into a specific topic to help you feel more confident and connected to your work as a dietitian. In today's episode, I want to talk about burnout, and specifically how to identify it, particularly in its early stages. All too often, I see dietitians missing those early warning signs, and they wind up crashing and burning. And I don't want you to experience that. So let's chat today about how you can identify burnout early so that we can do something about it before you hit rock bottom. Now, before we start today, I want to give a disclaimer. I just finished recording my first ever episode 1, season 3 video recorded podcast on YouTube. And I think it wound up being very long. So signs that I ramble a little bit when I am unscripted. Cool. We're rolling with it. We'll see. I know some of you like the longer episodes. I'll see if I can get some of them back down to like the 20-30 minute range so that I can have a mix of both, but we'll see how today goes. Now, today specifically want to talk about identifying burnout, and this episode is long overdue. I've talked about burnout a bunch on here, and you'd think that I would have touched on this at some point, but apparently I haven't. So let's go back to the basics, because I'm seeing a lot of dietitians missing the early warning signs, right? We're going to talk about why that is. And we're going to talk about how we can hopefully circumvent that so that you can notice it faster. Because here's the thing, recovering from full-on burnout is really hard, and it's complex and it's time-consuming. I have different clients who come to me at different stages of burnout, and it's difficult for the ones that are in serious stages. So I have one right now who I'm working with who's fully burnt out, and she is frustrated. She is feeling resentment. She is being challenged, and it is going to take more extreme measures to get her out of it. And it's going to take a lot more time. Whereas another one of my clients who I'm working with right now, she's only mildly burnt out. She started working with me at the mild stage, and we started catching it, and she started recognizing it. And because of a lot of other factors, she's able to make some progress, set some boundaries, and make some changes early on that will protect her capacity and prevent her from sliding down into that full-on burnout mode, right? And I want to catch more dietitians in that latter stage. I love helping the dietitians who are in full-on burnout because we need that support. And no one's talking about it, so I'll talk about it gladly. I want to help you. But the same way that we as dietitians want to ideally work with people before they get chronic diseases, before those chronic diseases escalate, I want to work with dietitians and empower them to notice what's wrong, these early warning signs before it progresses, right? It's the same thing if you have someone with diabetes, working with them when their A1C is starting to climb up and helping them with lifestyle changes and their relationship with food and their relationship with exercise and advocating for themselves at the doctor's office and all of that is lovely, and it can help prevent future complications. Whereas someone who we don't see until the diabetes has been unmanaged for a few years, they have a lot of confusion about what they should or shouldn't be doing to take care of themselves. There are all of these other systemic issues at play that are impacting their care. And it's progressed from all of these different factors for them to have kidney failure or potentially an amputation or heart disease, right? That's a much more complex situation. It is harder to help that person. It's not impossible, and it can still be very rewarding when you do, but it's harder to help that person. There are a lot more factors that we have to consider. There are things that are outside of their control. There are things that take a lot of time to work on, right? The same thing happens with burnout with dietitians. If we can catch it early, then I can give you a lot of coping mechanisms and strategies and support so that hopefully the burnout doesn't progress. There are still things the same way with chronic diseases. There are still things that are outside of our control when it comes to things like burnout. But there's more that you are in charge of when it's early, as opposed to getting a dietitian who has like crashed and burned. And it's complex, and there are a lot of other factors at play. And we're dealing with a situation where when you're hardcore in burnout, you need energy to pull yourself out, but you don't have a lot of energy because of the burnout. So it becomes this like vicious cycle of like, what comes first, the chicken or the egg? Do you try to get yourself more energy, even though the burnout is making that worse? Or do you try to resolve the burnout to give yourself more energy, right? All of that analogy to say it's complicated. And it's a whole lot easier for you if we can catch it sooner. Plus, the other reason why I wanted to talk about identifying burnout now is we are 2 years into this pandemic, and we are pretty much all living with low to moderate levels of burnout as a baseline at this point. So I want to talk about the early warning stages now, because even someone who wasn't burnt out before may be starting to exhibit some signs of it now. And I want you to be able to recognize it before it gets worse. So let's talk about the 3 primary signs of burnout. I tend to look at them as a progression because I tend to see them happening sequentially, but they're not necessarily always like that. The first is exhaustion. And the second is detachment. And the third is ineffectiveness. So let's go through these one by one. Let's talk about exhaustion first. Now, this is kind of self-explanatory, but the interesting thing about burnout is that it can cause chronic fatigue. It can also cause insomnia. So you could be exhausted and not able to sleep, which is, of course, only going to make things worse. You can also, in addition to feeling physically exhausted, you might be mentally exhausted. You might feel depleted. You might be more forgetful. You might have difficulty concentrating when you wouldn't normally. You might also get dread at getting out of bed, going to work, having to do something that's exacerbating your burnout. For one of my dietitians in the clinical space, where her burnout is centered very significantly around her work, that dread is going to center around the night before going into work, the morning of going into work, right? It's kind of like the Sunday scaries, so to speak. Now, there then becomes, in line with the exhaustion, there are some side effects of this physical and mental depletion, which is basically stress on the body, right? We get typical signs of stress. We get loss of appetite. You can get anxiety, depression, or anger. You can get shortness of breath or chest pain. You can get GI issues for any of us who gets a flare up in like IBS type symptoms when anxiety or stress is triggered. You may get headaches, right? So there's a lot of physical things that tend to cascade from this exhaustion. This is also often the first warning sign, right? But there's a problem with that. There's actually 2 problems. The first is that being tired is kind of normalized in this society. We have a baseline of expecting like, oh, like you're an adult, you're just going to be exhausted all the time. That's capitalism. That's capitalism saying like, oh, it's like just hustle and grind, which is tied into the second problem. But it's taught us to expect to feel depleted, right? And so everyone you know is exhausted. So what are you going to complain about? Why are you special? Why should you pay attention to this, right? We're taught to kind of just like, whatever, this is just a side effect of being an adult. It's not. It doesn't have to be. It's just being an adult in our society. And the other normalization that has happened is with the pandemic itself, because it's so prolonged, and there's very little that we can do about it. It's one of the sources of stress that is largely outside of our control, right? We can do some mitigation factors, we can follow the science, we can do all of the things, but ultimately we're not really in charge of when this pandemic ends anymore. And because of that, it again becomes a baseline. It went from being this like temporary thing to just get through to something that has become our new normal. And that makes it harder to recognize like, hey, this is actually a serious problem. It's kind of just something that we've come to expect of our lives. And that's very much tied into the second issue. One of the second big reasons why we tend to not see this as a big warning sign is that we're taught to push through it, right? It's tied in with this being normalized because everyone's tired and everyone's depleted and everyone's bandwidth is compromised, particularly with the pandemic. We're taught to push through. We have limited PTO, right? We can't just take off whenever we want to. And especially now, as I'm recording this the week that the CDC changed their guidelines for quarantine for healthcare workers down to 5 days or potentially even less if there are shortages. So we are being told the message. We are taught, if you are sick, if you are hurting, if you are mentally depleted, it doesn't matter. You have to show up to work because the world needs you. Doesn't matter that you need support. The world needs you more than you need it. It's this hustle and grind mentality that is hurting all of us. And I'm not here for it. Okay. And what this tends to manifest in is this concept of, I can rest when it's over. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. I'm pretty sure it's in my outline somewhere else. But this, like, I can rest when it's over. That is a dangerous sentence, and is one that so many of us say. I just need to get through this week. I need to get through this semester. I just need to get through this season. I just have to whatever, right? I'm just going to push myself because once I get to this X point, everything will be fine. I need to get through the pandemic. I need to get through whatever. The key is that we are being taught to push ourselves beyond our capacities, to not listen to the warning signs and blow right past them because the bottom line is more important, or because we think that we'll be able to rest finally when it's all done. And that is dangerous thinking. So we often recognize when we're exhausted, right? It's not like you're oblivious to that. You've just been taught not to take it seriously. Or you feel like you're in a position where you don't have the luxury of taking it seriously because you don't have the PTO, because work doesn't allow you to take off, because you have family to take care of, even if you do take off of work, right? There are a lot of different things. There's so much I could talk about on this topic related to like caregiver burnout and double duty burnout and all the things. I love talking to my clients about it. Let me know if you want to know more on that. But just remember that, this has been normalized, and if you feel like you either don't have the ability to pay attention to your exhaustion or you have that urge to just push through, you're not alone. Let's talk about what happens when you just push through. It tends to lead to detachment. And this is the spot where I see most of my dietitians fall. Okay. So detachment generally leads to a loss of enjoyment. So you're exhausted, which causes the detachment, which causes a loss of enjoyment. That's where we see a decrease in passion, enthusiasm, and motivation. And if I know anything about dietitians, it's that we are a passionate bunch. And when I start seeing dietitians losing their mojos, thinking about leaving the field, questioning their decision to be a dietitian, feeling like they don't have their spark or their passion anymore, that is like 10,000 red flags up in the air for me. We are facing a big problem in our field. We're facing it across the board in all different fields and sectors related to this, but I'm seeing it in dietitians in particular. And I'm sure that you know a dietitian. If you don't feel this yourself, you probably know someone who is feeling like this. If you're losing your passion for your work, that is a sign of burnout. If you're starting to lose your motivation and your enthusiasm, if you're starting to question your decision to be a dietitian, there is a good chance that there is burnout simmering under the surface there. Detachment can also lead to pessimism. It can lead to negative self-talk. It can lead to trust issues. Again, it's just this isolation that it tends to breed. We withdraw from relationships. We avoid interactions. We can kind of just like go to work, put your head down, and go home. I've read this as sometimes burnout is therefore misdiagnosed as depression. I would argue, and again, not a mental health professional, that this isn't necessarily like my area of expertise, although I've read a lot of the research on it. I would argue that it's not that burnout is being misdiagnosed as depression. I would argue that burnout is a contributing factor to situational depression. And you may actually, like a lot of these symptoms that you're experiencing, the pessimism, the isolation, the lack of motivation and enthusiasm, those are telltale signs of depression, but it's stemming likely from the burnout. The burnout is likely the root cause. Again, not in all situations. There's a lot of nuance here. But the key is that we want to be paying attention to both potential options. Now, if you're in this place and you continue to push through and you continue to just be like, well, I don't have any other options. The job market sucks. I have to keep working. We're in a pandemic. Like, I just have to push through and deal with it. You're likely to lead to the third sign and the most serious sign of burnout amongst dietitians, and that's ineffectiveness. That's when our work quality starts to actually suffer, and we start to not be able to like hold ourselves together as well. So the detachment causes some apathy and hopelessness, right? That's what detachment tends to do. And you get this like, nothing matters, what's the point mindset. Again, huge red flag for dietitians who tend to be very passionate people. Now, this can lead people to abandoning the career overall. We're seeing a flight out of dietetics specifically. And so you can get that, like, I made a mistake, I'm leaving. It can also lead you to just feel kind of stuck, right? Like, nothing matters. I don't have the energy to do anything else. I'm just stuck here. That can lead to increased irritability, which can make us feel unimportant or useless, which contributes to some other phenomena that I haven't discussed on the podcast very much, like moral injury. Can make you feel like you're stacked up against a system where nothing you do matters. And that can lead to a decrease in your confidence and exacerbation of imposter feelings, kind of just, again, feeling lost and stuck. And all of this comes together, this feeling useless and nothing matters and I can't do anything anyway, to an actual decline in your performance and productivity, both because you're exhausted, so you're having a hard time focusing and concentrating, like we said in the first sign, exhaustion, or because you just don't have that motivation, that drive anymore. And you wind up feeling like you can't get out from under all of the work that you have to do. You're drowning. It's this sense of being buried or drowning. Okay. How true do these feel for you? Where do you feel like you're at currently with this? I want to back up and tell you a personal story from the early parts of the pandemic, 2020, for me, to put it into context. Now, in 2020, I was still working as a supermarket dietitian. I was also working in this business, and I was going to school. I was going to grad school. So I had a lot on my plate. When COVID hit, especially in a supermarket setting, there was a lot of panic and there was a lot of confusion and there was a lot. And pretty much overnight, my job changed. it was brewing a little bit, but it was pretty much overnight where, I sat down with my boss and it was decided that I can no longer see people in person for my sessions. I had to cancel all of my events. I had to cancel all of my plans, clear my calendar. And I basically was put on bagging duty. I was bagging groceries. I was wiping down registers. I was learning how to be a customer service manager. I was not doing my job at all. And I was helping and I was happy to do it, but there's a toll that takes on you. By the middle of the pandemic, I was still barely doing my job. I was taking temperatures. I was sitting at a table for 8 hours straight, taking temperatures of employees who came in. And again, I was happy to help, but it wears on you. My motivation declined. My enthusiasm declined, right? When you're not doing the thing that you love, when your job changes and we can't have the impact that we wanted to have, that we intended to have, it can wear you down. And there was a pretty marked change in my demeanor and enthusiasm where I would go in, clock my hours. I stopped interacting with as many people. I stopped, being I have all these ideas. I have all these initiatives. I have all this energy and enthusiasm to just nope, I'm going to do my work, put my head down and go home, right? I lost my mojo. And it was slow, but it took its toll. And I know a lot of dietitians can relate to that, right? I started with the exhaustion of just of course, feeling exhausted, trying to juggle all of these things. And it went very quickly into depletion, exacerbated by the pandemic. And that led to an actual decrease in my work performance. I wasn't doing my job to the best of my ability by the end of it. I don't take pride in the work that I was doing in 2020. It's not the level of work that I usually do. I wasn't being my most productive self. I wasn't taking initiative the way that I used to, right? Because I didn't have it in my capacity. I was done. I was tapped out. And a lot of dietitians have experienced that inside the pandemic, outside the pandemic. And the crazy part is that we don't really see it happening. And I want to talk about that issue. There are two issues that tend to come into play. And again, we talked a little bit about it before of why we don't notice the exhaustion when it first hits. But let's talk about this bigger picture of why we let ourselves slip into this state of burnout in the first place. Two issues. The first is that the depletion is very slow. So you might notice that you're tired, but again, you don't necessarily notice, I didn't just wake up one day and have no mojo at my job. It was slow. It was over months that it took to wear me down, where I was just first, it was whatever. I just need to do it. I just need to stick it out. It's fine. And over time, it just wanes and your enthusiasm and your passion just gets sapped out of you. You don't go to bed one night excited about your job and then wake up dispassionate and flat and apathetic. It happens slowly. And I talked about this on Instagram recently. So if you saw that story, this is going to be a recap for you. But if you missed it, I want to talk about it on here because it's important. I was having this conversation with my partner who runs a mechanic shop for his family. And he sees this all the time with cars because we were talking about change and how we don't see it happening right in front of our eyes and how frustrating that can be, right? And he said that he sees this all the time with cars. Think about it. You drive your car every day. Every day, maybe not every day. Say you drive your car every day. I don't drive mine every day. But you're driving your car all the time. All the time. You don't notice the little gradual changes that are happening. So something goes wrong in your car and little things start going wrong. Little things that you don't notice because the change from one day to the next is so small. And then all of a sudden, something big breaks down. And it feels like it came out of left field. You're like, how did this happen? And my partner can look at it because he's a mechanic. He can look at it and he can say it was breaking down over the past few weeks, the past few months, little at a time. And there were these little warning signs, but they were so subtle that you didn't notice them until you crashed and burned. I wanted to come up with like a real analogy with examples, like you have an oil leak and then your engine dies, but I don't know enough about cars. I was going to get it wrong. It was just not going to be good. But the basic picture, the basic idea of this is that when something goes wrong, it's slowly getting worn down and worn down and worn down until all of a sudden it's gone. Like, okay, I came up with an analogy. Watch if he won't listen to this, but if he listens to this, he's going to be like, Jess, you got this wrong. But it makes sense in my head. Say you get a nail in your tire and there's a slow leak, right? Slow leak. This happens all the time. It actually happened to like my parents, and you don't notice it at all. Like it's just every once in a while you check your tire pressure and it's a little bit off, right? Like it's a little bit low and you're like, oh, I'll just put some air in my tires. And it's so slow that you don't realize that there's something wrong with it. You just keep driving on it. Well, what if you keep driving on it? Fortunately, this didn't happen to my family. What if the pressure gets so low and you don't refill it because you don't notice it, and the air just slowly seeps out, and then all of a sudden, I don't know, you have a tire blowout. Is that a thing? Someone who knows more about cars, let me know if that's a thing. But the key is you get this tire blowout and you're like, how did this happen? And it's because you had this tiny little nail hidden inside the like rim of your tire, slowly seeping the air out of your tire, and you didn't notice it because it was so slow. But when that tire blows out, you're at risk of a serious crash. You're at risk of hurting yourself, hurting others. You have a big repair on your hands. It can be disastrous, all because of that slow leak that we didn't notice. And that's not to blame you as a car owner, right? It's to say that it is human nature to not recognize gradual changes over time. And your burnout is no different. There are warning signs, but it's too hard to see it from the inside because you live your life every day. So you don't see it gradually shifting. It's one of the reasons why it's helpful to have a supervisor on the outside who can look in and say, this is an issue. This is a red flag, right? Because we don't see it happening. The depletion is too slow. The second issue that I see quite often is that we convince ourselves that it's temporary. So we might notice it, right? We notice that we're tired. We might even notice that there's a slight problem, but we're just like, I just have to make it to blank and then I'll be fine, right? That fallacy that we talked about before, that this is just temporary fallacy. That's the second issue that we run into, why so many dietitians wind up not catching burnout early, right? So maybe you're a student, like a grad student, or maybe you are a professor and you're just like, I just have to make it to the end of the semester and then things will be fine. Maybe you said, I just have to make it through this pandemic and then I'll be fine. And here we are in our, I don't know, is this the fifth wave that we have going on? Feels like it's never ending, right? Or even something smaller, like I just have to make it to the end of the week. I did this. We all do this sometimes. I caught myself doing this the other week. It was the week before Christmas, and I had a really crazy week. And normally I'm better at setting boundaries. Normally I'm better at safeguarding my time. I wasn't. And I had a full-on conversation with my therapist on like, I know better than this, but I said to myself, I just have to push through. I just have to make it to the end of the week. And I know the flaws in that logic because I work with dietitians on it all the time, but it's tempting, right? It's tempting because we all live in this society that normalizes that encourages us to just push through. And even when you work with other people all the time, telling them that they can't just push through, it can be hard to turn it inwards on yourself, right? And so why is it a problem to say like, I just have to make it to blank and then I'll be fine? The problem is that the target usually keeps moving. There is always something else. The semester ends and then your other job picks up, or the pandemic ends and then who knows what's on the other side of it. And then all of the things maybe that you've been putting off because of the pandemic start to come in and start to cause you stress and start to add up onto your plate. You get to the end of the week and there's still another week ahead of you, right? So our target keeps moving. And we find that that reprieve never actually comes. We just keep moving it further out. I need all of us to treat every single micro burnout as the real deal, right? So when you feel a little bit burnt out, you're like, I'm just like a little bit overworked. I'm feeling a little bit stressed. I'm feeling a little bit run down. I want you to treat that like it is heading towards full burnout, because there are some situations where burnout will resolve pretty quickly. I had a client who was finishing up grad school and came to me at the very tail end of grad school and was feeling kind of burnt out and was losing enthusiasm and passion and was just kind of feeling blah. And grad school ended and the burnout kind of resolved. Combination of some of the stuff that we were working on, but largely because the burnout was circumstantial rather than systemic, right? It was based on her circumstances. And when those circumstances did change, she was okay. So I'm not going to say that its temporary logic is always wrong. It's just that it's a really dangerous game to play, to gamble on whether it's going to be right or wrong. So the only way that you can tell if the burnout that you're experiencing is like temporary, circumstantial, mild, it's going to resolve in a few weeks or a month or so on its own, versus systemic, something that this is an early warning sign of something that's going to deteriorate into something really debilitating. The only way that you can definitively tell the difference is to push yourself and see what happens. It's playing with fire. If you kind of try to push through and it winds up being systemic and not circumstantial, or the circumstances take longer to resolve, like, hi, COVID, you're going to crash and burn because the burnout's going to progress. And so the only way that we prevent that, we truly prevent that, is that we are proactive and that we take every single sign of burnout seriously. We don't push through. We don't let society tell us that it's normal to feel depleted. Okay. So I want you to treat these early warning signs as red flags, right? Reject the BS capitalist message of like, just pull through. I need you to prioritize your need for rest, recovery, and boundaries. And I know that there are limitations, right? We work in a system. We still have to like exist as adults. And sometimes you're going to be limited. Again, systemic burnout, things that are outside of your control. But you have to resist the urge to brush it off. Society wants you to. Your job wants you to. Your job doesn't want you to have to take time off for serious like recovery. They want you to push through. They want you to think that it's not that big of a deal. And I want you to think of it like it is. And again, if you feel like you've been brushing it off for too long and you're on the brink, it helps to get support. It's outside of the scope of this episode for me to go into like, how do we recover from burnout specifically? And largely, it's hard for me to even make an episode on that because it's so individual. It takes getting into the weeds and working on it with you one-on-one. Like the car analogy, you might not be able to see that slow depletion. I can. Someone on the outside can see it. And so finding that someone for you who can help you, who can see it from the outside and notice as you're starting to decline into further stages is pivotal. And part of how we heal is with support. Now, burnout recovery is complex, it's multifaceted. It is really best for one-on-one work. That's something that I'm learning a lot as I'm working with more and more dietitians. And as a reminder, I do have 3 spots open to work with me one-on-one right now. I'm not opening up many. I'm keeping it small because I need to be able to give you my undivided attention, right? I know what it's like to come out of burnout. I know it personally, and I know it from working with dietitians who've been in the thick of it. The key is that you don't have to do this alone. don't try to do this on your own. There is a way out.